Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Blossom Heron 2024 to the backyard. There's a great programme of talks all day today. And today I've got an amazing panel of people where we're going to really inspire you about the power of continuous learning for your business, not just for successful development and growth, but also for innovation, strategy, and just kind of plotting your own kind of future as well. So we have 4 people here, 2 from the education side of things and 2 from the business world as well. So I'm just going to introduce everybody so you know who we're talking to today, and then we'll crack on with our discussion. And then there'll be some time at the end for a bit of Q&A. So if anything comes up that you want to follow up with a question with any of the panelists afterwards, be sure to make a note of it, and then we'll pass the mic around afterwards and you can ask us the questions. So this panel is called The Power of Learning. My name is Kate Ryan. I'm a food writer and founder of Flavour.ie. I was actually delighted to be asked to host this panel because I returned to school as an adult. I suppose in the past 5 years, I've gone back twice. I've done a postgraduate diploma and I just recently completed a master's, both at UCC, around Irish food and food culture. I'm a food writer, so that feeds directly into my own personal development and growth, and I can see the benefits of that to me personally. So I was very glad to be asked to chair this panel today. To my left here, Dr. Amy Troy is the manager of the Food Industry Training Unit at UCC, Ireland's first and leading training provider for professional development in the food, agri-food and seafood sectors, and has been collaborating with industry for over 30 years in the development, accreditation and delivery of part-time education for Ireland's largest Indigenous sector, which I think we often forget how just essential and large food is to Ireland's GDP, I suppose, generally. It's a flagship programme. Its flagship programme, which many of the BLOS community of producers have gone through, is the Diploma in Speciality in Artisan Food Enterprises. You're very welcome, Amy. Next to Amy is Dr. Joe Kerry. He is a lecturer at UCC School of Food, Science and Nutrition. And actually in 2 years' time, in 2026, the School of Dairy Science in particular will celebrate its 100th anniversary of its establishment and would make it the oldest educational centre in Ireland mandated to provide education in this area. Dr. Kerry's specialisations include food packaging, product stability, shelf life and smart technologies for food quality. And of course, he was instrumental in designing the sensory evaluation protocol that is used by every Blossom Heron judge every year for this awards. So where would we be without you, Joe? At the end, there is David McNally. He is one half of the husband and wife team behind Cocoa by Judith, based in Waterford. They were originally cafe owners. David and Judith saw a gap in the market for premium, handmade, hand-painted Irish chocolates that elevate the sensory experience of consuming the luxury chocolate experience. David completed the Diploma in Speciality in Artisan Food Enterprise and has used his learnings to develop the business so far. So it's a brand new startup. You only started this year, I think you said to me. Santina Kennedy, there just to the end, a good friend of mine, ran a successful cafe business in Wicklow for almost a decade before returning to learning, achieving a first-class honours in food science, followed by an MA in gastronomy and food studies, and achieving WSET qualifications in wine and spirits evaluation. She went on to forge a successful career with Powerscourt Distillery in County Wicklow, included as a brand ambassador for Fircullen Irish Whiskey and curating their food and drink pairing experiences, which blends history and folklore with Irish food and drink culture. She's now working as an independent drinks consultant and indulges her passion for the nexus where art and food collide with her innovative art plate events with her colleague Blanca Valencia. So a big round of applause, please, for my panel there today. I'm just after doing a talk and I've already gone croaky. So this isn't my usual voice, but I don't know, I kind of like it. So Amy Jane there. So I just wondered if you could briefly talk to us about the role of the Food Industry Training Unit at UCC, please.
Absolutely. So within UCC, we have this really innovative, small focused unit that caters just for those working in the food, agri-food and seafood sectors. So the people we work with are those that are working full-time across the whole range of the food sector, but want to upskill, want to continue their training, or want to take part in a course or meet like-minded people. So what we provide is very broad, very varied, and it's very industry responsive. So it could be someone coming to us and saying, I have this need, I don't know how to do it, I don't know how to fix it, and we work with them to create a course that helps them get to the next step of where they want to be. So it's very flexible and very different depending on the industry we're talking to, the person we're talking to, and where they see themselves going in the next couple of years.
And I think those taking part in the courses can do so from the individual perspective of someone just literally wishing or needing to upskill for a specific personal goal, or from the perspective of a business looking to innovate, grow and develop their offering. And sometimes in the artisan food world, that line can blur significantly. So how does the work of FITU, if I can abbreviate it to that, and the courses it offers work to support the aims of both of those perspectives?
So our key aim is working with the different type of person. So we might have a course in food science that sees people work 9 to 5, and we run the course in the evening. We know that entrepreneurs, those working in this sector specifically, are doing all the jobs. So that means courses are online. It means training is pre-recorded, so it's available when people are available. So there is no right way to study. There is no one way to learn. It's creating a package that works for the person.
Fantastic. And David, if I can come to you next, you completed the Diploma and Speciality in Artisan Food Enterprises with FITU, which is, as I said, its flagship programme in many ways. And together with your wife, Judith, you've created Cocoa by Judith, which produces luxury handmade, hand-painted chocolates. The previous business was a cafe. So in many ways, Cocoa by Judith is very different departure in a way. So why did you then identify the diploma as a potentially useful programme to sign up for, and how has it benefited the new business in actuality?
Thank you. The transition, I suppose, from cafe into chocolate was one that was almost on the back burner for a number of years. And as we began to migrate through, decision was made to sell up the cafe and move on. The diploma came up, it was advertised. I had known one or two people that had done it previously, and from their feedback, it seemed just an ideal fit. Just to be able to get a collection of like-minded people that wanted to learn, to progress, to I suppose to catch up with the industry. When mostly if you're working, your head is down, you're concerned about paying the bills, getting staff, doing a product, doing your deliveries, all those types of things. And somehow the changes and the connections and things like that can just pass you by. Suddenly you put your head up and you think, there's an awful lot that has been developed that I've missed. It wasn't necessarily ideal, or we didn't need it for the business. But when we paused after moving out of the cafe, you suddenly began to realize that there's an awful lot more that I have missed out on. Being put in a room with varied people, from cheesemakers to cracker makers to setting up their own companies, it was a case of everything was stripped bare. You weren't chatting to another business owner in a similar situation that you might have been almost guarded, the opportunity to say, I have a problem, does anybody know? And this was probably more enhanced in the on-site training days, going back to water cooler moments, or the good catering and sandwiches and coffees and cakes that we got all the time. It was more from there, but it was the small group. I think there was 18 initially signed up. I think 14 finished it. It was a small group. We were led almost to have our own WhatsApp group. Questions, concerns, bits and pieces, help, references to articles, all those things came in. And it was kind of it was a nurturing experience, but at the same time, from the college's point of view, everything was relevant. Some might be more relevant to some rather than others, but everything was relevant. It was up to date. You were introduced to circular economies, sustainable practices, things like that, which by yourself, if you went to go and try and source it, it would be quite difficult. But when it was brought down into a couple of hours of a lecture, but then the emphasis was on each student to continue on and do their extra research and do their extra learning outside of that time. I was fortunate as such that we took a year or so to do the startup, so I had a little bit more time rather than some of my colleagues. But it was a very worthwhile learning experience. I think it was excellent to do it.
Yeah, it's almost like that kind of nice blend between the hive mind and then the independent learning as well. Joe, there, UCC's School of Food and Nutritional Sciences offers courses for under and postgraduate students in areas such as dairy science, nutrition and technology. In a field of learning that is moving faster than ever, what are the challenges faced in delivering these programs for both students and the industry partners that the school collaborates with? For example, sustainable materials, life cycle analysis practices, working with AI, we're all talking about it now. It's a brand new world, I think you'd agree, where industry will require students with a different skill set altogether.
Yeah, well, there's a few sections actually to talk about in that, and I suppose the first one, from an undergraduate point of view, is going straight back to the industry. That there's a kind of an expectation by industry that there's a conveyor belt of students that will always be there and will always actually, be available to them actually to go out and work in industry. And I think that at times we kind of find that very frustrating as academics, because it's like at times we think that the industry are sort of, well, the academics will do the selling of the courses and then the students will come. But it's actually really important that the industry understand that they have a role in actually encouraging our future students to basically come into the system and to be able to say to them as the employers of these students that there's a great career and a great future to be had if you actually come and work for a company. One of the difficulties actually is that when you look at educators like us, students have already made their mind up actually to come and actually do the courses with us. And there's a lot of companies that I've met over my 30 years actually at this, where they're living, they're situated in the heart of the country in a community, but they never actually felt that they had to go out and actually talk to any of the kids or interact with teachers in their own local area at primary or secondary level to kind of explain that we do more than actually, it's not just milk lorries coming in and milk lorries coming out. This is actually the kind of work that we do, and these are the kind of careers and jobs that you can actually have. So I think that's really important that they do, because one of the things that we do is we talk to guidance counsellors to try and encourage guidance counsellors to talk to students about coming to us. Guidance counsellors, if they haven't actually been approached by the industry, can develop some very strange notions about things, right? And essentially, food might not necessarily actually be promoted at all by certain types of... And they look at us and go, well, sure, they'd say that anyway, they're the teachers. But this is actually where you need the industry, particularly at secondary school level, to kind of go in at the senior level and interact with students and tell them about the type of careers. And also to talk the food industry up. I have met people who work in the food industry, and when you actually hear them projecting their view on it, it's kind of a job, you're kind of going, that's not what other companies would actually end up saying about their own sector. So again, if you kind of are not very positive about it and you don't drive it, it's very hard to actually get kids to believe that there's a future actually in it.
Yeah.
So I suppose that's the first thing. And then in relation to the challenges that faces, I think that one of the things, again, as we're celebrating the 100 years, we've actually had the hiring of probably the largest amount of young blood into the schools that we've talked about, nutrition or food science. And interestingly, in these so I've been there 30 years, and what I've mostly seen is attrition around academics and them leaving, with a few actually being hired along the way. But in the last 2 years, we've actually hired 8 new academics. And interestingly, these academics actually are not kind of coming in to work in the meat science area or the dairy science, in the commodity areas. They're actually being brought in to deal with issues that the food industry have in a much more collective way. So all the issues that you actually highlighted around AI, I mean, we hear lots of scare stories about AI, but we're actually now just starting to have conversations with food companies about whether actually AI could actually cut out 3 years of research or 4 years of working on the production area and making all sorts of mistakes along the way, when actually AI might actually predict the way you might actually go about it.
Right.
Right? On a sustainability point of view, which follows a brilliant talk actually before this one, again, the situation is that we have now 3 new academics coming in whose job it is actually to look at the sustainability, not just from the raw materials that come in, but actually about food waste, that we can't have food waste in a circular economy, that essentially in a circular economy, that is, if you end up with something that used to be called waste, it needs to be something that's very productive. And again, it's not just people that are coming in to teach these areas, but it's also to research in these areas. And this has actually got the rubber stamp by the HEA and Science Foundation of Ireland. And so when they actually get behind these, they're basically telling everybody, they're telling the public, but they're driving the change actually at university level to say these are the things that we actually need from your future students
Yes.
coming out to work in the food industry.
Excellent. That's fantastic. Very inspiring, actually, Joe. That's brilliant to hear. Santina, your story is very inspiring as well. I think you returned to education later in life, like myself. And at a time in your life, I think when there was a lot of seismic change going on, both personally and professionally for you, that was taking place. And you began by studying for a BSc in food science and then went on to complete your MA in gastronomy and food studies. What appealed to you about the return to learning, first of all?
Thanks, Kate. It was actually a higher diploma in food science, in case anyone thinks I'm overqualified. to be talking.
Sorry, I think
That
that
was
was
the
me
ship.
laughing.
I didn't mean to be quite so shocking. Okay. Yeah. So I think, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I never thought I'd be returning to education. I thought that the moment that I was in then, whether it was being at home with my children or then later having my cafe, I thought that was me for life. This is my point for life. And I think looking back, you realise that there is no point and change is always happening. But I had allowed maybe a 25-year lapse in my education, and I'd been running my cafe for 10 years, and before that I'd been at home with my children for almost 9 years, and before that I'd worked in the Ulster Bank for almost 9 years. So I had almost 30 years of work behind me of one sort or of another, where I'd worked really, really hard, and I didn't even have someone to write me a reference. I'd been self-employed, I'd been at home, and the people that I'd worked with I'd lost contact with. And it was a really frightening place actually to be in, because I knew that I had to develop some sort of future for myself. My personal circumstances had changed. I was selling my house, I was closing my business, and I had a roof over my head, but I needed a direction and I needed to find it pretty fast. And the only thing that I really knew and loved at this stage was food. But I was aware of the MA in food studies, and I thought it sounds a little bit wishy-washy, and what, as my mother would say, well, what will you be when you've done that? But my brother, who has been in education all his life, he's now a chemistry professor. He was like, if you find the thing that you love, everything else will follow. So I was guided by him. But to get onto that MA, I needed to have a level 8, and I didn't really have the time or financial resources to be spending 3 years getting up to that level. So I did a bit of research, and I found the InnoPharma Springboard funded level 8 in food science, and I thought, right, well, I know food. This sounds like an almost sensible option. I'll give this a go. I'm going to say I'm not a natural scientist. I would struggle maybe to fit into some of your classes, but I think that's where I found grit. And this thing that people talk about grit, and I've never really had it before. If I go to the gym, I let my membership lapse. I'm not very good at those kind of things. But there was a sense of urgency, and I needed to do this, and I needed to do it fast. And I put my head down and studied really, really hard, and got a first-class honours in something that was a completely new subject to me. So that kind of showed me that I really...
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's it.
Please don't ask me about powder particle size after this, because it still haunts me. But I think then I started the MA, and that was just, I'm so glad I did it. It was literally life-changing. But the decision to do it was like, okay, I'm approaching 50. I have nothing substantial to hold or to no badge to say I've done this. Looking back, I realised how many awards the cafe had won and the esteem that was held in, but I had kind of lost my confidence at that stage, and I needed something tangible to say, I can do this, and this is my first step.
And just to go back to the Springboard access to the food science qualification there, like Springboard, for those who don't know, is a government initiative to heavily subsidise or provide for free access to certificate degree and master's level qualifications. So that access, that free or subsidised access to that Springboard that you needed back into education was actually vital.
Absolutely.
So would you agree it was actually life-changing for you?
It was life-changing. And the two things were life-changing about it were I would not have been in a position to take 3 years out of my life to study a traditional degree, certainly in something that I really was struggling with, a subject I was struggling with. But it was life-changing that, but also life-changing in the fact that I was on this path now and I literally just had to do it and do it properly and get it over with. And I think it gave me that, like, actually I can do hard things, Yeah, and not to be giving up halfway through. I had to do it, so I did it, yeah.
Brilliant. And Amy Jane, like, on that then, the financial supports for third level education are often essential for adult learners in particular, because as Santina says there, the investment in whether that's time or money to participate would normally be quite a substantial barrier for progression. What financial supports are available to support individuals, and are they general in nature, or are the funding bodies looking to support specific areas of educational development?
Yeah, it's a really important question, and it goes back to that, you know it if you know it. So if you're out working and, as everyone up here says, your head is down, you're not going to be aware of all the financial support, and there is so much available. Springboard is one. The diploma that Dave did, that's funded 64% by the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. Taste for Success SkillNet, who are funding Blas na HÉireann, fund a range of courses up to 80%. So really it's just about knowing where to go to look for the funding. So we have all the funding available on our webpage. UCC have all the funding made available. But knowing that it's there, but then also knowing to ask the question. So a lot of people will come to us and say, I want to do this. I don't see a course available anywhere. Is there funding that can help me? Because there is. We can go to people like Taste for Success, Springboard, DAFM and say, some people have come to us. There is a need and we can apply for funding on your behalf. So never feel that because you don't see it, that there's not an ability to get it. Our role in FITU, the nice name we call ourselves, is to really advocate on behalf of industry and get whatever funding we can to support the industry. And Santina and Dave made a very good point as well about the flexibility.
Yeah.
So this type of funding is tied into a flexible model of learning. So Springboard meant that Santina didn't have to commit to 3 years of a degree. And the funding that SkillNets provide mean that people can do 6 months or 9 months or 12 months instead of 2 years. Everything that is funded is skills focused. So they're making sure that you're cutting out all the extra bits that you probably aren't going to use, and you're going to come out with the skills that you can put into your business straight away.
Fantastic, yeah. And I think that's very essential, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It has to be, if you're putting in this time and effort to invest in yourself and potential future business, it has to be skills that you can apply immediately, really, because, once you make the decision, David, to kind of start a business, you're on the hoof straight away. So back to you, David, there, you consider the importance of embedding a budget or other financial mechanism to support continuous learning across the workforce, whether that's a startup or an established business. That's something you're firmly a believer in, isn't it?
Certainly. I suppose budgets for any business are always going to be hard, but if somebody is starting off or even has an existing business, you will plan your insurance, your rates, your water, all your normal charges, put in a little training budget, but realistically try and have the discipline to keep it. If you don't particularly use it 1 month, carry it over to the next month. And you might, if you've a small business, number of employees, you want to carry it over to next month, get something or look online, maybe do your own in-house training one day, and just build up your budget to be able to get in an industry expert or a consultant or somebody to help you out that way. I find any of the local enterprise offices, if you can connect with them and say, look, I can match a bit of funding. Do you have something that will be beyond my scope to be able to get? Can you match, or can you set me up with somebody? There is a huge range of support and various places to go, but sometimes it's being able to look through the long grass to actually find exactly what you need. Again, doing continuous education or adult education, I kind of went straight from school, straight into hotel, the old-fashioned hotel management side. Everything you learned in the hotel was relevant. And I'm delighted that you said that a lot of the courses are broken down into necessary skills. Refer back to everything about the course I did was interesting. Some things are more interesting than others, but pretty much the relevant things you will get out of it. But it's to have the discipline to actually set aside your training budget, both for yourself, for your own personal development, as much as anything else. Even if you do a course, it not only gives you the skills, but it will build up your self-esteem. As you said, I was the same thing, had worked for many, many years, but had really no piece of paper to show for it. Yeah. And now as I've been populating or probably sound like a dinosaur joining LinkedIn, and as it steps you through all the various bits and pieces, and then you begin to put in your little certificates that you've picked up over the last couple of years. And I know the Restaurants Association were very good during COVID, and the skill nets from there. There's actually quite a little bit more that I have put in together. What's the nice thing about doing some of the course is, or any of the courses that you do, is when you've been working for a while, actually, I know that. I didn't know what it was called, but I know that, and I'm actually using it without thinking about it. So there is an awful lot for personal development and your self-esteem by going back and doing a few extra courses. And certainly a little bit more focused one or a more developed one like the diploma was fantastic. So I thoroughly enjoyed it.
There is effort involved then, David, in accessing funding, whether that's generated by the business or looking for match funding or funding from elsewhere. And then obviously the time investment and actually doing the work then at the end of it. So what, as a business owner then, what do you consider the metric for success for that effort and that investment of training?
I think if it's on a personal basis, better self-esteem, you've a better faith, you've better feeling going into work. You know that, there is a slight problem, but I have built up connections through the course to be able to make a phone call or send an email, send a text. I've sent plenty back to Angela that ran the course, but she was able to direct my query to the likes of Tagish or other places for things like there. Chocolate being relatively smallish part of the market. There wasn't the same normal bits and pieces of advice and help and how to fix a machine or who's the best person to repair.
Yeah.
So it was that little connection. In terms of budgets, it's if you invest in your staff, if they see you investing in yourself, you invest in the staff, it should come back. It should come back to you.
Yeah.
There is obviously difficulties in putting people on part-time courses and balancing their work-life balance and getting them to work, especially if it's a key person.
Yeah.
But I think that kind of needs to be handled on an individual basis on kind of each individual company. But don't be scared of investing in people.
Yeah. I think that's, Santina, I might just come to you there. So that's a context for learning. What you are learning, when and why, they're all factors, aren't they, that drive continuous or lifelong learning. So how does that translate for somebody like you, and how do you share that experience with other people then?
So the kind of rationale for going back to learning and how to keep going. Well, I suppose, and one of the things when I started the Masters was because I'd always been interested in food and really food producers and connecting food producers to platforms and retail and restaurant experiences, that I thought, well, I'm going to do this Masters and I'm going to know everything about food, so I'll be really knowledgeable about telling people why they should have Irish produce in their menus, and I will know all about that, and I'll know all about food politics and food tourism. But I actually came out of it, the Masters, feeling that I knew less than before I went in, because there was so much more to learn. But what it did give me was the confidence and the skills to actually research, and if I didn't know something, to find out. And that was actually something I hadn't anticipated. I came out feeling, oh, I know less, but I actually know how to find out more. And that's been a gift, an absolute gift. But I suppose then going on from there and how my career has developed from there and the work that I've done, now when I see, oh, I don't know how to do that, I will look for the course to find out how to learn how to do that, or how to talk confidently about it or authentically about it. So that's why I'm just, and also when you go back to education after such a long time out of it, you realise, what have I been doing? Education is fantastic. Especially it's the one time you get to sit down and other people tell you stuff. They're not always coming to you and looking for the, I'll never forget the first lecture I did in the food science course was statistics. I mean, someone like me in a statistics class, hilarious, but sitting there going, oh my God, I don't know if someone's just telling me things. It's fantastic. So even that's a gift. But I suppose my motivations now are, where do I see a gap in my skill set? Do I need it? And how can I do it as efficiently and as cost effectively as possible? And I just think it's really fascinating the way you guys are operating, that you're really offering this really great range of stuff that people can cherry pick, and not in a kind of diva-esque kind of way, but like, how do I make this work for what I need it? So they really be, and I intend to keep learning now forever for work stuff and for pleasure. It's just, learning is amazing.
It's like I don't want to say drug, but it is a little bit. I just want to come to Amy Jane, to you first, and Joe will come back to you after. But I want to touch on the power of the alumna network that comes out of academia as well. It can play such an important role in that continuing sort of support between peers and colleagues, and can generate opportunities too. So how does UCC kind of encourage students to take part in the alumna programme that you have there?
So I might take it from the FISU industry perspective, and then I'll hand over to Joe for the more university perspective. So Dave mentioned a few times that, he was encouraged to join a WhatsApp group, and then every now and again he'd send in a text or might receive a text. So the first and foremost thing is, whatever course you're doing, you're in a group of people that have a like mindset. So they've experienced similar challenges, albeit maybe not in the specific industry, but they've experienced struggles with staff. They've experienced struggles with long hours and work-life balance. So you have that immediate network within your group. Within the Food Industry Training Unit, we work and collaborate with over 600 industry people a year, 600 new industry people a year. So everybody that comes into the unit becomes part of that alumni. And there's always some collaboration that happens, because Dave was our only chocolate producer last year, but he's one of probably 15 in the past 5 years. So we're able to make those connections on his behalf. And the other thing that Santina and Dave mentioned a lot was that validation aspect. So Dave said he came in, and what he was hearing the lecturer, or what we perceived to be the expert, say was good, he was already doing. So everyone that comes into our room is an expert in their own right, and sometimes it's so empowering to know what you're doing is correct, like that you're on point, you know it. And having the alumni around you, or having your group around you, or connecting with those people, really empowers you to think, I am doing a good job. And that empowers you to go further and continue, but to share that with others and to say, like, you are doing a good job. I did the same. I talked to John up in Wicklow, and he's doing the same thing. So it's really powerful, that industry network. But UCC has an absolutely massive food alumni, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Joe, I know you had said to me there that sort of over the past 10 years, UCC's School of Food Science and Nutrition has not had a single unemployed student come through your ranks.
No, and I think just on that, before I talk about that, actually, there was a funny story that was actually told many years ago about one time UCC used to actually train all of the dairy managers for the UK and Ireland. Now, these would have all been in massive competition with one another. And that 47 students that went out would be calling one another all the time because they knew one another and cut through the politics of big business to talk to one another, to help one another with solutions. And a class that actually comes through our hands with 47 or 48 students, they're connected through the learning that they've done as a class, but they're also connected as people and a network within themselves after they go out. And even though they're gone into all sorts of different areas, when one's in trouble and they stay connected, and it's never been more easy to stay connected now, we encourage all our students to actually get on LinkedIn and make sure they keep writing back to us to tell us how they're doing and how they're progressing actually through the system, because we are genuinely interested to see what actually happens with them. But David actually mentioned a very interesting thing a minute ago, actually about the water cooler.
Yes.
Right? That's one of the things where we talk about virtual learning and in-person learning. And I'm a dinosaur, you can all see, as you end up. So I like the in-person. Mainly because the thing is, you get like 17 or 18 people actually in a room. You throw the lecturer actually into it, and then there's a chemistry that actually is created around learning, which will not happen virtually. And it always reminds me, being in that situation, I teach on that particular course. I always remember Mick McCarthy's line of like, you know, when your ass is in the bacon slicer, when you actually walk in and you actually start ending up trying to engage with people who are really charged with what they want to do. And the good thing on that is you walk out exhausted. Maybe more exhausted out of a scenario like that than actually coming out of an undergraduate class, particularly if they've been all at that for an hour. But essentially the thing is, you see people that are actually charged, and you actually always, if it's a really good class and you get that chemistry, everybody has learned. It's not just the students, it's actually the teacher as well, and you feel invigorated and ready to go again. You know, and that's when you want more learning and you want more.
So actually
education.
the power of learning cuts both ways. It's student fueled, but it also fuels the lecturers and the university teams as well.
Yeah, exactly. And to the specific question, leaving out the COVID years, the last 10 years, like any of the classes that we've had, have 100% employment if they wanted in the food industry.
Yeah.
Now, when I say if they wanted, lots of people can now decide, I want to actually go travelling around the world and I don't want a job, right? That's fine. That's the ones I'm actually excluding from that. So about 92% out of any class will actually have a role and probably have 2 or 3 job offers. And I look at the students that we have now and I think of me as that student when back in the 80s, when getting a job in the food industry was like hen's teeth, right? Just so difficult. Now, like you have companies chasing after students to offer them 3 and 4 jobs. That's the demand that's out there, and long may it continue, as long as, if we go back to my original point, as long as the industry keep talking it up in terms of positivity.
Fantastic. Right. Well, thanks very much to my panel there. We'll throw the floor open to questions there now, if we have any.
Hi, I'm Katrina. I'm a baker from the Daily Apron in Lisburn. If I could ask Joe a quick question. I think it was fascinating when you were saying about, and you're right, industry has a role in education and training, as do the education institutions. Yeah. We employ a lot of apprentices, or we try to, and what we're finding, and we partner with our local education college, and we've spoke to them, and they're definitely skills prepared. But what they're not prepared for is the industry of, as bakers, we work from 1 a.m. or earlier, you know, and it's a hard sell. I know you're saying we have to speak it up, and we do our best, but our lecturers have said to us, we actually, if we tell them the truth, how difficult it is, we'll lose the students. So we kind of pull back from that. We give the skills and hope the industry can kind of help them. So I don't know if you have any special or a golden ticket around how do you sell that part of the industry? Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose like one of the things is it is tough love actually in UCC, so we don't hold back in that regard either. Anybody who turns around and you say to students, well, I really don't like doing the kind of quality control work actually inside in the factory, and when I finish here I'm going to be a manager, and then you actually flip that back and go, what kind of manager actually would you be if you didn't actually start on the floor and know what you were actually doing? So this thing of shift work, of putting in the hard grind, of the unsocial hours,
That's not hidden from the students in this industry. But what they're actually told is that's what you actually have to be able to do. So that if you are going to be that manager in 10 years' time, you can confidently talk or, manage a group of people, and they know what you're talking about, you know it. You've lived it. Yeah.
Brilliant. One more question I think we might have time for. Anybody? No? Everyone's gone quiet on us. Well, we'll wrap up there now. I just want to say a big thank you to my panellists, David, Santina, Joe and Amy Jane. Thanks very much for listening. There's going to be talks all day long in the Blast Backyard here. Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening. Thanks to my panel.
Thanks for being, Kate.